in the Ad Council. You're listening to BostonFreeRadio.com.
Hello and welcome to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic Dan Burke, and just as a reminder, Words on Film is a show to which you are listening on BostonFreeRadio.com and WBCA-LP Boston, watching and listening on Somerville Community Access TV or some community TV station that was kind enough to pick up this broadcast. And to them I say thank you as always. Or you are watching and listening to me on Facebook Live, either on my own personal page or on Boston Free Radio's Facebook page, which I'm still trying to get adjusted to right now because it has a new camera. But either way you could join me, I'm glad you could join me to discuss my favorite topic, which is movies. So this is a special edition of Words on Film in that it is a show where I am dedicating this entire program to the Oscars and my picks for the Oscar winners, and that is going to be, the Oscar ceremony is going to be next Sunday. It's going to air live on ABC. Hopefully it has better ratings than it did last year, and last year's show was actually pretty good. But first, I'm going to start things off with my usual first segment, which has nothing to do with the Oscars, not really, which is What's Topping the Box Office. These are the top 10 highest grossing films of this past weekend. Some of them are hits, a few of them are flops, but I'll let you know the difference as I go down the list. And it's a little bit predictable here, but the number one movie at the box office, given the hype surrounding it and also the fact that it's a brand new action film coming out mid-February, right before the Oscars, is Alita Battle Angel, directed by Robert Rodriguez. And I'm not dedicating this show to new film reviews like I usually do, but this is one of the films I'll be reviewing next week, because I did see it this past weekend. I just haven't reviewed it for you on this show yet. So this weekend it grossed $28.3 million at the domestic box office, and total it has so far grossed $37 million here at home and $137.4 million worldwide, and that is against a budget of $200 million, which is a very high budget for any movie, but most especially for a Robert Rodriguez movie. In fact, I'm not exaggerating when I say that Alita Battle Angel cost more than Robert Rodriguez's first 10 films combined. Yeah, so it's very unusual for Robert Rodriguez to work with this big a budget, but so far, at least internationally, he's off to a really good start. Domestically, he has a ways to go, but of course, we'll have to see how it does in the coming weeks. The Lego Movie 2, the second part, debuted at number 1 last week. This weekend, it fell to number 2, having grossed just $21 million at the domestic box office. Against a budget of $99 million, though, the Lego Movie 2 has so far grossed $62.5 million here at home and $103.5 million worldwide, making it not a hit yet here at home, but around the world it is a tentative hit, and it's well on its way to becoming a certified hit. Isn't It Romantic is the second highest grossing debut movie of the week. This weekend, it was number 3 at the box office, having grossed just $14.3 million. Against a budget of $31 million, Isn't It Romantic has so far grossed $20.6 million here at home, because remember, it opened on a Wednesday, not a Friday, to make room for the Valentine's Day crowd. And around the world, it has grossed $22.9 million. So it's not a hit yet here at home or around the world, but it's off to a pretty good start, especially given its budget. What Men Want is number 4 at the box office, sliding from number 2 last week, having grossed $10.7 million domestically this past weekend. Against a budget of $20 million, What Men Want has so far grossed $35.9 million here at home and $40.1 million around the world, making it a tentative hit here at home, very close to being a certified hit, but it's already reached certified status all around the world, so very good for that movie. Happy Death Day to You didn't start off great. It's number 5 at the box office, debuting. It's the number 3 highest grossing debut movie of the week, though. It grossed $9.5 million this past weekend at home. Against a budget of $9 million, Happy Death Day to You has so far grossed $13.2 million here at home so far. Again, just like Isn't It Romantic, it opened up on a Wednesday, not a Friday. And around the world, it has so far grossed $26.5 million, making it very close to a certified hit, but it's a tentative hit so far here in the States and Canada, but around the world it is already a certified hit and not looking back. Cold Pursuit, starring Liam Neeson, debuted last week at number 3. This week it fell to number 6, which isn't a huge drop, but the numbers are not encouraging. This past weekend, it grossed $6 million here at home against a budget of $60 million. That's $60 million. Cold Pursuit has only grossed $21.1 million here at home and $24 million around the world, which means it's not a hit yet here at home or around the world, and it looks like it probably won't be. The Upside, starring Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston, is number 7 at the box office, sliding from number 4 last week, having grossed $5.5 million here at home this past weekend. Against a budget of $37.5 million, though, The Upside has so far grossed $94.1 million here at home and $104 million around the world, making it a certified hit here at home and around the world, and not diminishing the star power of either Kevin Hart or Bryan Cranston in any way, shape, or form. Glass is a movie that is in its 5th week in release. It dropped from number 5 last week to number 8 this week, having grossed just $3.9 million at the domestic box office just this past weekend. Against a budget of $20 million, though, Glass has so far grossed $104.5 million here at home and $235.6 million worldwide, which means that despite its middling reviews, it is a box office juggernaut and is not looking back in its certified hit status here at home or around the world. The Prodigy debuted last week at number 6. This week it fell to number 9, having grossed just $3.2 million this past weekend here at home. Against a budget of $6 million, The Prodigy has so far grossed $11 million domestically and $12.1 internationally, making it a tentative hit here at home, but a certified hit all around the world, just inching its way to a certified hit. And chances are, even if we don't see this in the top 10 next week, it will reach certified status at home. And finally, number 10 at the box office is Green Book, which slid from number 7 last week to the number 10 spot, but still the Oscar buzz around this movie is doing really well for Green Book. It grossed $2.9 million here at home this past weekend. Against a budget of $23 million, Green Book has so far grossed $65.9 million here at home and $127.1 million worldwide, making it a certified hit here at home and around the world.
Is that a faucet running?
That's not a faucet. That's a river rushing through the forest. Forest rivers provide over 100 million people with clean water to drink.
What? I can't hear you because of the vacuum.
That's not a vacuum. That's the trees in the forest cleaning up the air we breathe.
I didn't know the trees were so amazing.
Yep, and the forest gives us shade, trees to climb.
That's awesome. Let's go explore some more.
Visit the forest today and enjoy all it does, just for you. To learn more about the forest and find one near you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Never Stop the Madness, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. BostonFreeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic, Dan Burke. And as I said before, this is a special pre-Oscar show where I give you the categories and then determine the winners, but that does not mean I'm not going to review any new movies. As a matter of fact, the two groups of movies I'm going to review are going to be the nominees for Best Animated Short Film and Best Live Action Short Film. I would also do the Best Documentary Short Films but I've already seen those and I reviewed them on last week's show. But I'll give you a brief synopsis as I go down the other categories as the show progresses. But in short, I'm going to review the animated short films first, and I realized I just made a pun there. That pun was not at all intended, I promise you. But basically, the animated short films were kind of safe this year, whereas the live action short films, all of them were sad. 3 of them in particular were just unambiguously devastating. I'm going to get to the live action short films in a moment, but first, I'm going to review the animated short films. And I'm going to review them in the alphabetical order of their titles. So we're going to start off with the the short film Animal Behavior, which comes out of Canada. It's directed by Alison Snowden and David Fine, who I'm told directed another animated feature from Canada, which was more adult-oriented. Animal Behavior has some light adult humor to it, but mainly kids will enjoy this one. I could probably guarantee it. Although it has kind of that wry sense of humor that you'd expect from comic strips like Frank and Ernest or The Wizard of Id, in that there are very family-friendly looking characters in this film, but there are also some very underlying adult humor in it. And Animal Behavior is definitely a film that I could see as a comic strip, potentially. But basically, it's a bunch of anthropomorphic animals who are joined together in a group therapy session. And the newest member of the group therapy session is an ape who is basically in denial of his inner feelings. And eventually, chaos and the titular Animal Behavior ensue. And this animated film is beautifully animated. It's a little bit of a combination of computer animation and hand-drawn animation, primarily hand-drawn, whereas the CGI is more for the background. But I did think it was a funny film, and certainly it deserved to be nominated. The other film in the Best Animated Short category is one, I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, Bao, B-A-O. I really hope I pronounced that name right. And interestingly enough, it is a Disney Pixar film about a woman who seemingly can't have a child, so she ends up making one out of a fried dumpling. And eventually, things are going well between this mother and her fried dumpling child, but then eventually the fried dumpling child grows up, and the mother, who I believe is Chinese, is unable to let her child go. And eventually you find that this is not so much a fantasy like the Gingerbread Man, as much as it is a metaphor as the movie progresses. And anyone who has seen or has walked in on time for Incredibles 2 saw this short. The third nominee in the animated short film category is a hand-drawn animated movie called Late Afternoon. And Late Afternoon is out of Ireland, and it's directed by Louise Bagnall and Nuria Gonzalez Blanco. I initially thought that the two of them were married and had the same name, but my apologies. That was a mistake on my part as I was reading the names. But in any event, the movie is about actually a woman who is elderly and who's being taken care of by her daughter, and she is experiencing dementia. And the movie is very beautifully drawn, and also it's probably details some sort of family topic that is not particularly pleasant to discuss, but it is a movie that certainly details what's going through an elderly person's head as the world around her is changing and as her mental state is also changing. The fourth animated short film is one that is CGI animated and looks a lot like the animated short Bao, as well as a lot of the short films that Disney Pixar has animated. It has a lot of the same themes, too. It's sort of a poignant look of growing up, but this is not a Disney Pixar film. It's directed by Andrew Chesworth and Bobby Pontias, and I guess they used to work for Pixar, and certainly that influence shows. And it's about a young girl who dreams of being an astronaut, as well as her relationship with her father, who is a cobbler. And it tells a very beautiful story, and also one that people of all ages can relate to. And finally, the fifth animated film is one called Weekends, which is a film that, very much like One Small Step or even Bao, is one that is told almost without dialogue, and it's about a young child who is basically dividing his time between his mother on the weekdays and his father on the weekends. And the more I tell you about this film, the more it's going to spoil it for you. But it certainly is poignant. And I think it actually might take place in the 80s because there is one particular song that is very prominent in this film. And before I go any further about, well, I've already told you the nominees for the animated short film. I got to tell you, it is really hard to pick the winner. But if I were to pick the winner, it would probably be Late Afternoon. I think it has the most simple drawings of the other four nominees, but it also tells a universal story despite being from a country that's not America, and I really appreciated it for that. But with that said, I really loved all of the animated shorts in this category, and I really hope they are in theaters or in select theaters long enough for people of all ages to view. And I always make sure to see those, and not just because I'm hosting a show.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Listen to She Likes It Heavy on Tuesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on BostonFreeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic, Dan Burke, doing my special pre-Oscar show. And next week, I'm actually going to be doing my take on the winners, who did win, who should have won, and so on and so forth. And I'm also going to cover the Razzies. But I'm not going to cover the Razzies for this show, basically because I've covered that for another show. I've already said who should have been nominated, who shouldn't have been nominated, who should win, and so on and so forth. I'm going to cover that next week. It's going to be a fun show. But for this week, the only new films I'm going to be reviewing are the short films that I didn't review last week. So I told you before the break that the animated short films are really poignant, and some would say they were even safer choices for the Academy to choose. The live action short films, I gotta tell you, all of them are sad. 3 out of 5 of them are just flat out devastating. So I'm gonna go through them one by one, again in alphabetical order, in descending order. And I'm going to start with a film from Ireland, which is called Detainment. It is directed by Vincent Lamb and Darren Mahone. And this is a film that is based on a true story about two 10-year-old boys in 1993 who are arrested. At first, you think when you see them running around that they're arrested for shoplifting because they're going around a mall and just taking whatever they want without paying for it. But eventually you find that what they're taken in for is something far more sinister than shoplifting. And from there, it gets really, really sad. And it certainly left an impression on me because not only am I mostly of Irish descent, I was also 10 years old in 1993. And had I hung with the wrong crowd, or had I, a number of circumstances, something like this could have happened to me. I mean, I thank God that it didn't, but my God, this is one of those films that is a stake through the heart, harrowing. And the kids in the movie who play the kids who are arrested, based on real people, are amazing in this film. Both of them, but most especially one of them. But moving on. The other nominee for live-action short film is one called Fauve. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's F-A-U-V-E, and it's a French word because this film comes out of France. It's directed by Jeremy Comte and Maria Gracia Turgeon, and it's about these two boys who are left to their own devices. They're not engaging in anything juvenile, but they're basically playing on an abandoned construction site when something really bad happens to one of them. And I'm not going to reveal what happens, but you really have to see this film for yourself because it literally takes your breath away when you see the danger these two kids get in. It's really sad, and this is another film that is a complete gut punch. Another film that is nominated for Best Live Action Short Film is one that is sad, but it's not. It's more the poignant sad more than the gut punch feeling of detainment or what I think is pronounced fauve. This one is called Marguerite, and it comes out of Canada, although it's all in French, so it comes out of Quebec, presumably. It's directed by Marianne Farley and Marie-Helena Panisset, and it is about a woman who is not only experiencing a bit of dementia, but she also has failing health, and she's being taken care of by an older nurse who we find out is a lesbian. And it becomes sort of an unusual love story that reminded me a little bit of Harold and Maude, but not in the sense that it's that kind of love story, the same one that's in Harold and Maude, but there are certainly some similar themes to it. But overall, it's a very sweet movie that might actually get you in tears as the movie ends. The fourth nominee for live action short film is a film that comes out of Spain, and this one is called Mother, or Madre, as it's known in Spanish. So it's directed by Rodrigo Sorogoyen and Maria del Puy Alvarado. And it's a movie that takes place entirely in a woman's apartment where the woman in question is conversing with her mother about what she's going to do for the evening, but then she gets an urgent phone call from her 6-year-old son, who, thank God, has a cell phone. But the son is stranded on a beach somewhere, either in France or in Spain. We aren't given the answer immediately. And his father, who I guess is divorced from his mother, either that or the child was born out of wedlock, but either way, the mother and father are separated, and it's the father's turn for the weekend, leaves his son on the beach with nobody around him and nobody watching over him. So he's on a beach that he doesn't know where he is. All he can see for miles is sand and water, as well as a fence, and his father has not come back yet. And this movie probably would not exist, and the terror that the mother experiences in this movie is probably would be more delayed if it weren't for the cell phone call. But this is a gripping film, but it's not the emotional gut punch that Detainment, Fauve, or the final nominee for Best Live Action Short Film is. This is a film that comes out of America, and it's called Skin. It's directed by Guy Nativ and Jamie Ray Newman. And it's a film that actually does not have anyone that you would recognize in terms of actors. It has someone I recognize, an actress named Danielle McDonald, who was in a movie I really liked 2 years ago called Patty Cakes. But this is a film about rednecks. It's about a father who is taking care of his son, teaching him how to shoot, living the redneck life. But things take a turn for the worst when this redneck father is in an altercation with a black man who lives in his neighborhood. And from there, the movie takes some interesting turns, but it is also an emotional gut punch. And I'm running out of time, but of these 5 nominees, the one I think should win is Mother, or Madre, because this is a film that takes place almost entirely in one shot. And that cinematography alone is impressive, but the acting, I think, is a notch above the others, surprisingly enough.
Hi, This is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit RAIN.org, that's
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic, Dan Burke. And now that I've reviewed the nominees for Best Animated Short Film and Best Live Action Short Film, it's now time to get to my other nominees, particularly who I think will win and who I think should win. So I'm going to start off with some of the smaller categories, not so much the science categories, but some of the other more overlooked artistic categories. And I'm going to start actually with documentary shorts, since I already reviewed my picks for animated short film and live action short film. Now, I should note as a disclaimer that these categories I'm about to announce, I'm very, very bad at picking the winners, because honestly, the Academy voters, the members of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, consist of a wide array of people, probably even more diverse now than they ever have been before. Actually, not even probably. More diverse now than they ever were before, thanks to the 2016 Oscars So White campaign. And I mean that as a compliment. So, just briefly, my pick for Best Animated Short Film is Late Afternoon. Again, I don't know what Academy voters who are diverse and have many different jobs as actors, directors, screenwriters, producers, I'm not sure what they look for. Do they look for quality? Do they look for something to which they can relate? I don't know. But my pick is Late Afternoon for Best Animated Short Film. Best Live Action Short Film, I think, is going to be Mother or Madre from Spain. The Best Documentary Short Film, the nominees are, very briefly, Black Sheep, Endgame, Lifeboat, A Night at the Garden, and Period End of Sentence. Now, all of these documentary shorts are great. I have my rating system of Knockout, which is great, Checkout, which is good, Strikeout, which is bad, and Flunkout, which is just flat out terrible. But all of these are knockouts, no question. But amongst the documentary shorts, I think that Lifeboat is going to win for Best Documentary Short. The reason I say that is because it tells a great story, certainly one that is of the times we live now, where immigration is a very hot topic, not just in the United States, but in the Western world in general, particularly in developed countries. And there are refugees that are escaping poverty and persecution, and there are actually good souls, very much like the white helmets in the Taliban terrorized regions of the world. And I think that if the short film about the White Helmets, which was a Netflix original, won 2 years ago for Best Documentary Short, there is a very good chance that Lifeboat, which is about a similar group of nonprofit workers, is going to do the same thing. As a matter of fact, the organization in Lifeboat shouldn't just win an Oscar. They should win a Nobel Peace Prize. But that, of course, is just my opinion. So for documentary feature, this is, feature-length documentary. The nominees are Free Solo, Hale County This Morning, This Evening, Minding the Gap, Of Fathers and Sons, and RBG. Now, the one reason that I'm bad at picking the best documentary feature is, as much as I go to the movies, as much as I pay attention to new films, big and small, that come out, I have never once in my 5 years of hosting this show ever seen the 5 nominees for Best Documentary. So that puts me at a disadvantage. But if I were to pick one based on the 2 out of 5 that I've seen, I would probably choose RBG. And the reason being is because, not just because it is a great documentary, but also Ruth Bader Ginsburg is really popular right now, especially with the controversy that's going on in Washington, D.C., and liberals love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They also love the fact that she is as old as she is and still very active in her duties as a Supreme Court justice. And that's one of the big reasons On the Basis of Sex did as well as it did for a movie of its subject in theaters this past holiday season. It wasn't a great movie, but RBG is a great documentary because it tells you exactly why Ruth Bader Ginsburg is great and why her accomplishments should not be ignored. So that's my pick, but I do also release my caveat of saying that I'm not usually right about this because I haven't seen all 5 films, but I'm rooting for RBG in particular. And there are also nominees that I thought should have been nominated for this category, but I'm not taking that away from any of the other nominees because of the 2 I've seen, both of them were excellent. So, moving on to Best Original Score, that is the orchestrated music, or orchestrated original music in a movie. The nominees are Black Panther, Black Klansman, If Beale Street Could Talk, Isle of Dogs, and Mary Poppins Returns. So my pick for Best Original Score, and I might be wrong about this because you never really know what Academy voters are voting for and for what and for why, but my pick would be Mary Poppins Returns. The reason I'm picking Mary Poppins Returns is because of the 5 nominees in the original score category, the music that's really stayed with me personally is the music from Mary Poppins Returns. That's probably the most evidently musical film of these 5, and that's my pick because I love the music in that movie, particularly. But also, I think that Academy voters, will go with the music they remember the most. And not just the background music. And that's not to take away from any of the composers that composed, the music for Black Panther or Black Klansman, but Mary Poppins Returns seems to be among the best and the most memorable, in my opinion. For Best Original Song, the nominees are All the Stars from Black Panther, I'll Fight from RBG, The Place Where Lost Things Go from Mary Poppins Returns, Shallow from A Star is Born, and When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So of these 5 songs in this category, there were some that I actually think should have been considered even more so and probably should have been nominated, but I would choose Shallow from A Star is Born because very much like Let It Go 5 years ago, Shallow is a song that is inescapable. Even if you haven't seen A Star is Born, Shallow, you've probably heard that song. So that's what I'm going to go with because popularity is a big issue.
What if you were wearing something sexy? What if you were drinking? What if you made the first move? No matter what, sexual assault is never your fault. Support is available 24/7 through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Call 1-800-656-HOPE or visit RAINN.org. That's RAINN.org. This is Christina Ricci with Rain, reminding you it's never your fault.
Brought to you by Rain and this station.
You're listening to Free Speech Radio, bostonfreeradio.com.
Diane Wong here, announcing a new radio program. Let's talk about race. From our beginnings as a white supremacist society to our current existence as a white supremacist society, race is a topic that affects us all, and yet we have difficulty talking about it. Why is race so difficult? Why can't we talk openly about white supremacy? Why don't we like to talk about white privilege? Why is internalized oppression shrouded in mystery? What about lynching? What about gerrymandering and the current Black Lives Matters debate? We'll talk about all of it. Come and join us Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Let's talk about race. Boston Free Radio.
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic, Dan Burke, continuing with my special pre-Oscar show where I attempt to predict the winners. So just as a recap, I predicted for Best Documentary Short, Lifeboat, for Best Animated Short, Late Afternoon, Best Live Action Short, Mother, Best Documentary Feature, RBG, Best Original Score, Mary Poppins Returns, and Best Original Song, Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper from A Star is Born. And just very briefly for that latter category, I chose the original song Shallow because it is an emotionally poignant song. It's certainly a song that had a lot of significance of all the other songs in A Star is Born, and it's immensely popular right now. And songs that are immensely popular tend to win the award over songs that aren't. And that's probably the category, arguably, of all the other categories in the Oscars that is directed more by popularity than by an underground appreciation. So Shallow is my pick, but then again, I could be wrong. So now on to Best Adapted Screenplay. There are a number of very interesting nominees for this category. Actually, I didn't expect one of them to be nominated, but here are the nominees. The nominees are, for Best Adapted Screenplay, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Klansman, Can You Ever Forgive Me, If Beale Street Could Talk, and A Star is Born. So of these 5 nominees, my guess for who would win Best Adapted Screenplay would be If Beale Street Could Talk. And If Beale Street Could Talk is based on the book, which is written by James Baldwin and was adapted for the screen by Barry Jenkins. Now, the reason that I'm choosing the If Beale Street Could Talk is because it's mainly a guess, but also Barry Jenkins won the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, which he shared with Terrell Alvin McCraney for Moonlight 2 years ago. So he has a little bit of an advantage there with a follow-up movie, but also this is a film that really stayed with me emotionally, and that's not to take anything away from the other 4 nominees, but Can You Ever Forgive Me? I don't exactly see that being a winner. It might be upset by Black Klansman, but my guess is If Beale Street Could Talk is probably the forefront in this category based on how well it's written, its emotional depth, and also the fact there isn't a single boring character or forgettable character in this film. So on to original screenplay. The nominees are The Favorite, First Reformed, Green Book, Roma, and Vice. Interestingly enough, I wouldn't have expected Vice to be in this category because I would have thought this was based on reporting, but in any event, I am quite sure, based on the hype surrounding this film, that Roma is going to win Best Original Screenplay. And I'm not just saying it will win because it's popular, but also because this is a story that probably is the most original amongst the other nominees and also has perhaps the most emotional depth. Plus, it's a film that says a lot despite not having a lot of dialogue. And I think for that reason, Roma is probably going to win for Best Original Screenplay, and in my opinion, it should. Now on to another category. This is for Best Animated Feature. I've already done the Best Documentary Feature. Might as well do the Best Animated Feature, not to mention the Animated Short Film. So, for Animated Feature, the nominees are Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, My Ray, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, disclaimer, I have not seen Mirai, M-I-R-A-I. I don't even know if that's the way it's pronounced. My guess is I will eventually see it, but this animated feature category is, for the first time in a couple of years, dominated by American films. And there's really nothing wrong with that because they're very good animated films. But my choice for Best Animated Feature would probably have to be Isle of Dogs. That's the movie that I think should win because it is the best animated. It tells a really unique original story, and also its animation being stop motion is still incredible when you actually take a microscope, figuratively speaking, to the film and you see something as subtle as the dog's hairs moving in the wind. I just think it's incredible. Plus it has great set design, and above all, probably the most original story. I didn't think the Incredibles 2 story was particularly original. It had some tropes that I thought were kind of borrowed from other films. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I thought was a little too out there. Granted, it's a great film. I gave it my rating of a knockout, but I don't think that Academy voters will appreciate it as much as comic book fanboys do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if there were one movie to upset Isle of Dogs, it might be My Ray. It also might be Ralph Breaks the Internet. But my guess is, based on its set design, its original story, its incredible animation, and also the fact that it's not based on a franchise or a sequel, Isle of Dogs, in my opinion, gets this award, or at least in my prediction, gets this award. So now on to the category of Best Directing. The nominees are Spike Lee for BlacKkKlansman, Pavel Pawlikowski for Cold War, Yorgos Lanthimos for The Favorite, Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, and Adam McKay for Vice. So who I think will win the award is probably going to be Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, based on the hype surrounding that movie and also the fact that it's getting a generated word of mouth. But my pick, I'm going to go out on a limb here, is that Spike Lee is going to win for BlacKkKlansman. He might pull off an upset in this category, and I think that he deserves it because BlacKkKlansman was my second favorite film of the year, and I think it is one of Spike Lee's best films. He should have been nominated years ago for at least Do the Right Thing and maybe even The 25th Hour and Malcolm X. I'm glad he got the recognition he deserves, but he is the sixth black man to be nominated for this award. He really should have been the first. And I think that the Academy voters, as diverse as they are, might give it to him based on his previous repertoire.
To have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I love those real six signs. They're the ones that move me. The thinly blow, neurotic toe. Intensify and groove me.
All this and more on Unpopular Music. Saturdays at noon on Boston Free Radio.
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures. I'm your host and movie critic, Dan Burke, continuing with my special pre-Oscar show. I'm going to go through some of the last nominations that are more artistic than science, because honestly, it really would take me being more familiar with the technical side of filmmaking to more accurately predict those nominees. But if I were to pick a technical category right now, I might as well go with visual effects, because sound editing, sound mixing, I'm not saying who cares, but it's really hard for me to determine which one is the best of the best of the best. But visual effects is probably the more obvious one, so let's go with that. So the best visual effects nominees are amongst the more popular movies that have come out in 2018. The nominees are Avengers Infinity War, Christopher Robin, First Man, Ready Player One, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. So I think that the Star Wars fatigue that a lot of moviegoers are feeling right now is probably not going to result in Solo: A Star Wars Story winning this category. Christopher Robin, again, the visual effects in that movie were impressive, particularly the CGI on the characters like Winnie the Pooh and Tigger, as well as all the other anthropomorphic characters. But I don't think it stands as well against the other films on this list. First Man, I think, is also had some very impressive visual effects, but it doesn't hold a candle to either Avengers Infinity War or Ready Player One. I do think that Avengers Infinity War will probably win. Who do I think should win? Ready Player One. The visual effects in Ready Player One were very ostentatious and very elaborate, but I think it should actually win over Avengers Infinity War, because unlike Avengers Infinity War, Ready Player One created this whole ornate universe that hadn't existed before. And yeah, you could argue the same thing about Avengers Infinity War with the planets that the Guardians of the Galaxy visit in this film and the other dimensions, and that's all well and good. But Ready Player One is a Comic-Con goer's dream come true visually. I also think it is a surprisingly underrated movie and goes with Steven Spielberg's other underrated movies such as Amistad and The Terminal, amongst others. But in any event, now on to the acting categories, probably the moment for which you've all been waiting. So I'm going to go with Best Actress in a Supporting Role first. The nominees are Amy Adams for Vice, Marina de Tavira for Roma, Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk, Emma Stone for The Favorite, and Rachel Weisz for The Favorite. So the actress who I think will win and should win is Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk. Not only because she's had a very impressive repertoire over the last 30 years, but of all the heart-wrenching performances in If Beale Street Could Talk, Regina King's is amongst the best, and I think her performance stands out amongst the other nominees in this category. So Regina King is my pick, and it also helps that she won Best Supporting Actress at the Golden Globes. Now for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, the nominees are Mahershala Ali for Green Book, Adam Driver for Black Klansman, Sam Elliott for A Star Is Born, Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Sam Rockwell for Vice. Of the 5 nominees in this category, I would probably say Sam Rockwell didn't quite deserve to be here. I like Sam Rockwell a lot, and he's certainly coming off a well-deserved Best Supporting Actor win from last year for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which was a deserved win, by the way. But for me, it comes down to Mahershala Ali and Sam Elliott. Mahershala Ali is a one-time previous nominee and one-time previous winner, whereas Sam Elliott, despite his 40-year, maybe even 50-year acting career, this is his first time ever nominated. It's down to these two. I would probably pick Mahershala Ali, mainly because he had the most screen time in Green Book, more so than Sam Elliott had, but he also had a more profound effect. Again, this is judging the best of the best of the best. But he had a more profound effect on the movie Green Book than Sam Elliott did for A Star Is Born. But if Sam Elliott wins this category, I won't be disappointed. Now on to Best Actress in a Leading Role. The nominees are Yalitza Aparicio for Roma, Glenn Close for The Wife, Olivia Colman for The Favorite, Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Of the nominees on this list, the one I think should win and will win is Glenn Close for The Wife, particularly because Glenn Close is the only living actor. Let me try to say this. She is the living actor with the most nominees and no wins. She's been nominated 6 previous times before this year. I have to look up for what movies she's nominated, but this is her time. In addition to that, for a movie that didn't get any other nominees for the Academy Awards, I think that Glenn Close deserves this because she had one of the most heartfelt performances of the 5 actresses in this category. But if there's one to pull off an upset, it's probably going to be Olivia Colman for The Favorite, who also had a standout performance. But my money is on, if I were to put money on this, Glenn Close. Now for the nominees for Best Actor in a Leading Role. The nominees are Christian Bale for Vice, Bradley Cooper for A Star is Born, Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate, Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody, and Viggo Mortensen for Green Book. Unquestionably, who will win, who should win? Christian Bale for Vice. There's just no question about it. Not only was his makeup in old age really great, but also Christian Bale embodied Dick Cheney. And I will say the same about Rami Malek for his performance as Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody, but Christian Bale's performance was riskier, in my opinion. I think that probably either Willem Dafoe or Rami Malek would pull off an upset, but my guess is with Christian Bale as Dick Cheney in the movie Vice. And now on to Best Picture. The nominees are Black Panther, BlacKkKlansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, Roma, A Star is Born, and Vice. Who will win? Probably Roma. The odds are in that movie's favor. Who do I think should win? BlacKkKlansman. And just because I thought it was an excellent film.
Bad theater seats, cheap Halloween masks, my apartment, all things with obstructed views. Add to these large trucks and buses. 18-wheelers and large buses have big blind spots, and like my apartment, they don't always have the best view. Bus and truck drivers deal with blind spots around the entire vehicle. Always take care not to ride alongside or too close behind them. Our roads, our safety. Learn more at sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Every Tuesday at 3, something special happens on Boston Free Radio. Why, it's Toppers with your host, Gil. Toppers, spinning the tunes that today's youth demand, from Justin Bieber to Lady Gaga to the Fleetwoods, and, on occasion, Hoagie Carmichael. If you missed the program, you can check out the archives at Toppers Radio, that's one word, .blogspot.com. Toppers.
Welcome back to Words on Film, the spoken word show dedicated to moving pictures, where I wrap up my talk about my picks for the winners, who I think will win, who I think should win. And before the break, I predicted that Roma was going to win for Best Picture. Who do I think should win? BlacKkKlansman. And this is, I guess, based on personal opinion, because this whole show is based on my opinion. But there's a lot of hype surrounding Roma, in addition to the fact that no foreign language film has ever won Best Picture at the Oscars before. And Roma certainly has a bit of timelessness as well as timeliness to it, which I think will elevate it to the Best Picture winner. But I also think that BlacKkKlansman has the same kind of qualities as Roma. It's great to see BlacKkKlansman be in the nominees, but again, my prediction is that Roma's going to win. If BlacKkKlansman upsets Roma, I'll be happy, but if it doesn't, I won't be disappointed. All of these films are great films. There aren't a bad one in the bunch. As a matter of fact, I'm still kind of livid about the fact that the Academy did not even consider the movie Hereditary for Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Actress Toni Collette, Best Supporting Actor for Alex Wolff. I'm a little livid about that, but of course, these are just movies and there are far more important things in life, I will keep telling myself. So, now that I'm done my Oscar talk for the show, I'm now going to get into my final segment of the show, which is what's coming out next. This is a spoken word preview of movies that are coming out to a theater near you, unless I state otherwise. And there are a ton of films here that are going on into either automatically into theaters nationwide, or they are going into nationwide expansion. The first of these movies is a film that I think will outseat Alita Battle Angel for number one at the box office, and that movie is How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, which I believe is the third How to Train Your Dragon movie. It's where Hiccup discovers Toothless isn't the only Night Fury, and he must seek the Hidden World, which is a secret dragon utopia, before a hired tyrant named Grimmel finds it first. And there are a number of voice actors who were in the first two How to Train Your Dragon movies that return for this one. They include Jay Baruchel, America Ferrera, F. Murray Abram, and Cate Blanchett. As for me, I don't think I'm going to see this movie. The reason is because, surprisingly, I have not actually seen the other How to Train Your Dragon movies. So if I saw this one, I would be lost. So even though I'm not going to review any new movies for next week, I am going to skip the third How to Train Your Dragon. But of course, if you want to see it and you're a big fan of the first two How to Train Your Dragon movies, by all means, knock yourself out, see this in theaters. A movie I will see and I will eventually review for you is one that's called Fighting with My Family. And this is one that's going on into nationwide expansion. In fact, I think I mentioned this film in last week's What's Coming Up Next category, but just to reiterate, it's a movie about a former wrestler and his family who make a living performing at small venues around the country while his kids dream of joining the ever-dominant World Wrestling Entertainment. So the movie stars Dwayne Johnson, Lena Headey, Vince Vaughn, Nick Frost, and a couple of other people, and it's directed by Stephen Merchant. And this is a movie, and Stephen Merchant is actually an actor who has a more familiar face than you would expect from hearing his name. He was on an HBO series called Hello Ladies, and he's been in a couple of films of note before this one. There was one in which he acted, and he was at a wedding where he sat at the unpopular table, Table 19. That one also starred Anna Kendrick, and he was pretty funny in that movie, although that movie was kind of weird. But Fighting with My Family is a movie I will see eventually, and I will review it for you probably 2 weeks from now. Another movie that's coming out in theaters nationwide, or is scheduled to do so, is one called Run the Race. This one is directed by Chris Dowling, and it stars McLetty Williamson, best known for being Bubba Blue in Forrest Gump, and it also stars Francis Fisher, Christoph Polaha, and Tanner Stein. And it's set against the backdrop of high school football and track, where two brothers in a small southern town face escalating problems with two different worldviews, straining but ultimately strengthening the bonds of brotherhood. It sounds a little bit like a religious film, but I'll see it anyway. It might be good. And McLetty Williamson has always been a good actor. So that is a film I'll look out for. Can't guarantee if I'm going to see it.